Good afternoon and welcome to A Better Jamaica's Meet the Candidates for District 27 Council District here live on Zoom. So thank you so much for joining us today. Our candidate for this episode is Anthony Rivers. Hi, Anthony. Good afternoon.
Hello, everyone. How's everyone doing?
This has also been dubbed another chance to strut your stuff. So today, what we're going to ask is that you don't answer in sound bites or traditional bullet points, but instead, the focus of this interview is for us, the constituents, to really get to know all of the candidates, to get to know your story, your values, your background, and of course, your vision for the district. So let's get started, shall we, Ms. Candidate Rivers?
Yes, Miss Lewis, let's get started.
Thanks so much. So first, I think about all of the good fairy tales that start once upon a time. So let's start there with you, Candidate Rivers. Once upon a time.
Okay. Well, I'll tell you my story,
Well,
and
we
it's
want to
part of,
hear your personal story, and we can start with where you were born, and then things like, do you have siblings? We want to know who you are.
okay, fair enough. I can give that to you. Born and raised in Brooklyn. At the age of 17, I went into the United States Marine Corps, served my country, and then I came back home. And when I came back home, I moved back into Brooklyn, into East New York. I got married, and me and my wife set a goal to buy a house. And we knew we didn't want to live in the suburbs. At least I did, because I didn't want to have to make that commute, and I didn't want to have to deal with those taxes.
So you mean like
So
Long Island suburbs?
yes, any Nassau, Suffolk, Rockland, Orange, Putnam counties, any of those surrounding counties. Yeah, I knew it wasn't for me. So in 27 years ago, we actually did purchase a house right here in St. Albans. And the funny thing is, and I tell people this story all the time, and they say, well, where's your passion for your community? And I'll tell you, growing up in Brooklyn, I grew up in Bedford-Stuyvesant. And that's when Bedford-Stuyvesant was Bedford-Stuyvesant.
Bed-Stuy, right?
Yes, it was
Yeah,
Bed-Stuy, do or die. That was the
right.
mantra of the neighborhood. But now it's Bed-Stuy gentrified. So
Now
it's
it's
a whole
Bed-Stuy, you
different
can't
ball
afford it,
game.
right?
Yeah, it's totally different now. But anyway, I grew up there. And when you grow up in Bedford-Stuyvesant, you're a little, I mean, at least I was a little naive. Um, you don't really see houses with front yards, backyards, driveways, and things of that nature. So when I moved out here and I saw that, we have a front yard, we have a backyard, we have a driveway, it's quiet, and the to captivate it all, it's Black owned. I was dumbfounded. I didn't know that many people in the city of New York of African American descent actually owned this much property.
Mhm.
So I tell people all the time, I don't like this neighborhood. I love it. I love it. To me, this and if you love something, it's worth fighting for. So that's where my inspiration comes from.
Great. Do
Uh,
you have siblings?
yes, I do. Along the way, me and my wife, we have three children.
What do you, well, you personally, do you have siblings, brothers and sisters?
Okay, yes. Well, I have three sisters and two brothers.
Oh, mercy.
Yes, that's why at 18 I had to be on my way. It was a
Where do
little
you
proud. It was a
where
little
do you
proud of me.
fall in the birth order? Where do you fall?
I'm the youngest of the boys, and I have two sisters younger than me.
Okay. Mhm.
So I'm the baby boy.
And just tell me briefly, what do your brothers and sisters do?
Okay, well, my two older brothers, they're both retired. One of them used to work on a nuclear power plant, or whatever he did was classified. The other one was a chief in the U.S. Marshals Service, United States Marshals.
Mhm.
Uh, my oldest sister is into the healthcare industry. My youngest sister, not my youngest sister, my middle sister is a teacher, and my youngest sister works for the U.S. government.
Nice. Awesome. So then we were at the point where you moved here and you and your wife, tell us about your children.
Okay, I have three children. I say grown adults now. They ain't no children, but they three grown children. I don't know if we can classify that as such.
What are their age? If it's not too personal, if they don't mind you putting it out there, how old are they?
Well, I don't know if they're gonna mind or not, but I'm still, hey, let me cross my arms. I'm the head of this household. Let me tell you. Now I have a son, 33 years old. He's an MTA police officer, followed in his father's footsteps. Hoorah. My daughter is in a master's program at Rutgers University. She's aspiring to be a doctor. Very competitive field, very tough for her to get into.
Mhm.
And my youngest son, and she's 27, and my youngest son is 26, and he's a application software design engineer. I don't know, whatever you call it, but he does a lot on the computer every day.
Mhm. Are they well, I know one's at Rutgers, and the other one is away. Is the youngest one still here?
Yes, he is, and he eats quite a bit of food too. I might want to add.
It's the community fridge in mom and dad's
Yes,
house. Are you
yes,
kidding?
yes.
It was the very first community fridge was mom and dad's house. Way before we had them down at Triangle Church, we had one in your in your kitchen, I'm
Yes,
sure, for
absolutely,
all three kids. Um,
absolutely.
so I forget, where did you go to high school?
I went to high school in Brooklyn Automotive High School. That's
Mhm.
why I'm always for vocations in schools. I still change my own oil and oil filter and my brakes occasionally when I have the time. So yes, I'm still very handy with that.
Mhm. And so you and your wife moved to Queens and you bought
Yeah.
your house. And then what did you do for a living?
Okay. Well, quickly working for NYPD, once you buy a house, you realize you need a second income. So I became licensed in the financial services industry,
Mhm.
and I started working two jobs simultaneously. So I'd work from 7 to 3:30 with NYPD, come home, change, put on a shirt and a tie and a suit jacket, introduce myself as Anthony Rivers, the financial services provider in the evening from 5 p.m. to 11 o'clock at night.
Mhm. And was that for a particular company or was that on
Well,
your own?
unfortunately, I'm a captive agent. I can't name the company,
Okay. Mhm.
so I can't do that. But yes, and I'm still licensed and I still do work for them even to this day.
Great. And so you were a police officer. Tell me about that. What was your rank, and how does that um, influence your thoughts for District 27?
Okay, well, let me just reel back just a minute and say that when I was in the military, I worked on helicopters. I worked on very expensive helicopters. Each one of them back then in 1984 was worth about $30 million a piece. So I did the pneumatics and the hydraulics on those helicopters, and I also flew on them from time to time as a crew chief.
Okay.
When I got out, I was offered several jobs. I was offered one with Pan Am. If now, some of the younger people may not know who that is, but
Hmm.
I was offered a job with Pan Am. I was offered a job with Islander Helicopter, and it was my good friend or best friend, whom I'm still in contact with today from high school, that was already a transit officer. I had already taken the test. When he took the test, he encouraged me to become a police officer because I really had no knowledge really of what the police actually did or interacted or how they interacted with people back then. So I knew exactly what a police officer was, but I didn't know exactly what the job entailed.
Right.
And so he encouraged me to do the job for 1 year, and if I didn't like it, then I could go back to working on helicopters. So I
Both
took the
dangerous
job.
fields.
Yes, I took the job. Coincidentally, neither one of those companies that offered me the jobs are in business today, but I'm sure I would have moved on to another one. But I took the job with NYPD.
Right.
Not so much that, like I said, I wanted to be a police officer, but every time when I came home on leave from the military, I just saw the deterioration of my city and the area that I lived in. And I just couldn't believe that I was, again, naive. I didn't know people were addicted to the drugs that they were at the time.
Right.
And I didn't know, I just saw everybody, asking for change and things of that nature. So I got involved on the police line so I could see, hey, maybe I can make a difference. Maybe something can happen. And that's what kind of helped me between him and that encouraged me to become a police officer. So that's my story with that. And unfortunately, as much as he talked me into the job saying we're going to work together in transit, back then we had three different departments. We
Right.
had city, transit, and housing. I ended up with the housing police department, which means I worked in the NYCHA buildings.
Okay.
A whole different story from transit, let me tell you.
Right.
Yeah. And NYCHA back then, I ended up working in Brooklyn,
Hmm.
Marcy houses, Tompkins houses,
Yeah.
Roosevelt. Let me think of some of the other projects: Red Hook,
Right.
Gowanus, Wyckoff, Farragut. Well, it was Fort Greene then, but now it's Whitman Ingersoll. So all of the really nice houses I got an opportunity to work in,
Hmm.
and it was very challenging at times. I mean, there was a lot of gunplay. People talk about the violence in the city today, but back then we were having somewhere around 2,300 homicides a year.
Oh
So
wow.
it was nothing to see people shot every day on the streets
Hmm.
in the city of New
About
York.
what year was it that you became a
Oh,
housing police
1988,
officer? Okay.
1988,
Mhm.
1988. I'm sorry. 1988. I actually left the Marine Corps on a Wednesday and was in the police academy the following Monday.
Wow.
Yeah.
You weren't playing around.
Well, it happened coincidentally that way, but in thinking back, I probably should have had some sort of civil readjustment, because when you leave the formation, or you stand in a formation in the Marine Corps, and they tell you to stand at attention, you stand at attention.
Mhm.
It's a whole different ball game in the police academy with some of these individuals when they tell them to stand at attention.
Mhm.
And anybody in the service will know what I'm talking about. They're scratching their head, they're picking their nose. In the Marine Corps, we don't do none of that. So
Right.
I needed some civil readjustments. But anyway, yeah, I ended up there the following Monday, and I ended up uh, getting through the police academy, and then obviously working in the north side of Brooklyn.
And so you were a housing officer the whole time, a housing cop the whole time?
No, 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 no. I stayed with housing up until I think it was 1999,
Okay,
and then
11 years, right?
not no, I'm sorry,
Oh, about 11 years. And
about
then,
11 years, just about. And then I went to the 8-4 precinct for a reprieve,
Mhm.
and from there I went to the 106 precinct for a very short period of time. So I was in the 8-4 precinct not even 1 year. Then from there, I got a transfer closer to home, and I was in the 106 precinct,
Right.
and I stayed there for approximately about a year and a half. So around 2000, yeah, about 2000, I got there, and by 2001, I was promoted to sergeant, and I left there.
Oh, wow. And
Yeah,
where'd you go? Where were
I
you
went to the
sent
I
to?
went to the I went to the 49 precinct as a sergeant, which is the north side of the Bronx.
Right.
Hmm. And I stayed there approximately about 5 years, and I was promoted to lieutenant.
Oh, nice.
Yes, and then I came back into housing. They pulled me back into housing, and I ended up in a police service area number 7.
Where's that?
People don't understand the functionality of police service areas, but police service areas normally cover more than one precinct, but only the housing facilities within those precincts.
Right. So was
So
that
that's,
also in the Bronx?
yes, that's the South Bronx. PSA 7 is in the South Bronx. So that's the 4-2, the 4-0, the 4-1, and I think a very small part of the 4-3 precinct.
Okay.
So that's where I ended my career. And I stayed there for, I guess, about 6 months as a platoon commander for the day tours, which means I monitored the sergeants and the police officers on their daily routines. And then I was elevated to Lieutenant Integrity Control Officer for the entire precinct.
Mm-hmm.
Now,
Wow.
people don't know it, but in a Lieutenant Integrity Control Officer, as we like to say, ICO, the ICO is responsible for the integrity of the sergeants and the police officers and the civilians of the entire command.
Oh, wow.
Now, yeah, when we talk about integrity, we're talking about every issue that you could possibly think of for the officers, from uniform appearance to trying to sneak in and out of the station house early or late,
Right.
not showing up for roll call properly attired, to actually responding. Every time someone picks up the phone and they dial 911, they consider that a radio run or a job. The operator puts it on the screen, and then she dispatches it to the officers in the patrol car.
Right.
The officers in the patrol car, their duties and responsibilities is to answer that dispatcher when she calls them
Mm-hmm.
immediately, receive the information of what type of police call it is, or I like to say radio run, but people don't understand that terminology, but whatever type of police call it is, and then they're supposed to respond immediately. It is the ICO's job to monitor those calls and make sure that those officers do respond in a timely fashion. Now, who would ever think it that an officer might just stop and get a cup of coffee along the way?
Not how that wouldn't happen, right?
Never. So the task at hand is large. I had a sergeant as an assistant and a couple of administrative staff to keep track of all the administrative paperwork that the Lieutenant Integrity Control Officer deals with.
So, so
Also,
you, so this is a lot that you've done in the police officer in all of your years of service. And so if I were to take all of that, because I'm just looking at the time, how does that experience, all of those years in the police force, all of the different positions, all the different places that you worked, how does that inform your view of the 27th district? What about that background? What about your background in the police department makes you particularly well suited to represent the residents of District 27?
well, what I look at is I take the 23 years that I spent with NYPD, all of the community interaction that I've had over those years, all of the different blah, 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 that I've had to deal with in those 23 years, I was very successful. I was very successful. And as in my tenure as an ICO, we had 0 incidents in my precinct.
Mhm.
So right there alone, as far as policing goes, I don't think there's any candidate that's better versed or knows the inside or outside of the police function as I do.
Right.
As far as community interaction, again, I've been in the hotbed of many situations, and none of them never escalated due to the experience that I brought with me when it came time to interact with our community. As far as the financial services go, I have spent thousands of hours across the kitchen table educating and assisting everyday families on how to save and accumulate money for retirement. I'm also the founder of our neighborhood group, People for the Neighborhood.
Right.
And that group was founded to provide unbiased information about our neighborhood. Intentionally,
How do you go about doing that? Is it meetings? Is it outreach?
it's outreach, it's meetings, it's time spent walking through the community, talking to people. We're not a 501c3. Intentionally, we are not a 501c3, even though it was offered.
Why not?
Because whenever you take something, something is expected. We like an uninfluenced platform, an unbiased platform. We want to be able to tell what we see as being the truth and not influenced by anybody else threatening to remove funds that we may become dependent upon because they don't agree with what we're saying.
So
So
do
for
you
that,
just fundraise to raise money for your organization?
I'm going to tell you a secret. I'm going to say the entire organization is funded by me, Anthony Rivers.
All right.
But if my wife hears you say that, she
You'll
will
deny.
beg to differ. She will tell you it's our money, not his money.
I like your wife.
Yes. So yeah, we fund the organization ourselves. Anything that we do, everything that we've done, if you go to that website, was funded by us.
Which website? Give us
People for the Neighborhood, peoplefortheneighborhood.com is the website. I don't know if you can see it behind me, but peoplefortheneighborhood.com is the website.
And when did you start that?
I'm sorry?
When did you start People for the Neighborhood?
You took that right. You took that right out of those words out of my mind right here because I was about to spew them out. Around 2014, 2015 is I became involved in a particular incident here, right here in St. Albans on these buildings on Hollis Avenue.
Mm-hmm.
And we felt at that time that the electeds involved were being disingenuous when it came to spewing information to the public about those buildings and what the purpose and how they were going to serve the community.
Right.
So my website was created back around 2014, 2015. It wasn't created for the sake of an election. That's not what I do. You won't see no fancy videos of me marching through the neighborhood with music playing. That's not what we do.
Uh-huh.
We believe in true advocacy, okay, with transparency. And those buildings on Hollis Avenue, they were not being, the electeds were not being truthful. We started indulging. The more we got involved, the more we found out that there was some misrumors being spread.
Right.
So we found a need to provide real information to the community, or a place where they could go, where they could get unbiased information. When it came to fighting over those buildings, long story short, we did not agree with the electeds on what they thought the.
Oh, you're on mute. You muted yourself by accident.
As though there was no survey conducted. They wanted to, initially those buildings were slated to be an in-transit homeless shelter for men.
Right. I remember the buildings on Hollis Avenue, not too far from Francis Lewis. Right.
Right. And we got involved and we said, no way can you put 120 in-transit homeless men in between 5 schools, across the street from a library, across the street from a city park, and right down the block from a daycare center. There's no other neighborhood that anybody would ever even think of doing such a thing. So we got involved, and like I said, long story short, we ended up in court. I ended up leading a coalition of People for the Neighborhood into court, into Supreme Court over those buildings. And I testified on behalf of community, and the judge was very impartial. He listened to us, and he gave us a restraining order against the city of New York.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, we had a restraining order against the Department of Homeless Services and the Department of Human Resources, because that's who we sued. Unbeknownst to us, we did not know that Help USA, which is an agency that manages these type of facilities, was involved. And we believe that there was some trickery, so to speak, of how all of a sudden everybody came up with a lease and it wasn't going to be an in-transit homeless shelter, that these was
Okay.
going to be permanent apartments, but it was
Problem
introduced.
solved.
Yes, it was introduced in the trial. And unfortunately, since Help USA wasn't adjoined to that trial from the very beginning, we couldn't get a disposition on the case. But coincidentally, when they did issue us the restraining order, the city of New York immediately moved us to the appellate division to try to get the restraining order released. And I again testified in the appellate division, not being a lawyer, and we were upheld in the appellate division with the restraining order because of the lack of the study that was done to put the in-transit homeless shelter there. But
Right.
lo and behold, during the course of the trial, they said, oh, no, it's not in-transit homeless shelter. It's going to be for veterans. Now, myself being a veteran, I love my veterans. I'm an honorably discharged veteran, but we do have other veterans who are not honorably discharged veterans. So we have to be careful. And I'm gonna be honest with you, Ms. Lewis, if it had been for 120 male priests, I'd still have the same argument because I'm a Catholic, but every priest is not a good priest. We understand that as well. So
So,
that's where I'm at with that.
so since then, what has People for the Neighborhood been up to?
Okay. Most recently, we got involved with this carting company on Liberty Avenue because when I ran against Danique Miller in 2017 because I felt he was a little disingenuous to our community on not only just the buildings on Hollis Avenue, but a few other incidents that I had been involved in that I didn't think that he was very forthcoming. So again, I just want to bring back to the buildings. People say we lost the case, but I just want to have people fact check in timeline that yes, we eventually lost that case because we had to bring it back a second time. They shopped for a judge. The judge did not even let us come into the courtroom. Immediately, as soon as he got the case, he released the restraining order, which means they could occupy the building. And he made us submit everything in writing. And he didn't even want to talk to anybody from our neighborhood. So this is the difference in justice that we're subject to at certain times, depending on who you get in Supreme Court. So everybody said, oh, Anthony Rivers, you guys lost the case. Ha ha. Some people said that. I said, listen, we may have lost the battle, but we won the war. Right. Because what we did is we put the city on notice that Community Board 12, Southeast Queens, would no longer be the dumping ground for supportive housing. Because prior to that, Community Board 12.
And speaking of the dumping ground, you were talking about the carting. I don't mean to move you on, but we don't have a lot of time. So I want to hear about what you've been up to with People for the Neighborhood, more recently with the carting.
Okay. Well, what I was alluding to is I ran against Danique Miller in 2017. And during my campaigning, a lot of people complained about the air quality around 173, 175 in Liberty, and it was very poor at the time. And what we did is I joined a coalition of other individuals, and we began lobbying and fighting for a Royal Carting Company to clean up their act. It's unfortunate that we could not get Mr. Miller to go on board with an intro that was being proposed by Councilman Ray Reynoso at the time. So we had to travel into Brooklyn to sit down with Councilman Ray Reynoso to get him to understand our plight with Royal and incorporate additional legislation into that bill that actually reduced the amount of truck traffic and the amount of organic waste that Royal could take. Therefore, if you drive by there now, even though it's hot out, you don't get the same odor that you got previously. It's because that bill mandated that they reduce the amount of waste that goes in and out of that facility now. So we've been very successful as a coalition. I won't say Anthony Rivers took the lead on that, but I was definitely a part of the coalition. We made several trips to other waste companies to see how they processed it. We see how they were able to keep the odors down, which unfortunately Royal has none of those methods in place. That's why they're in the process of wanting to build a new facility, even though technically they shouldn't even be in that area anymore because originally they were zoned there, but now the zoning has changed and they really shouldn't be there. They've been grandfathered in for whatever reason, but we want to make sure that at least the facility is up to speed so that environmentally the people around it don't have to suffer anymore. So that's what People for the Neighborhood has been up to most recently.
Candidate Rivers, I see how passionate you are about the Hollis Avenue issue and also the waste management issue, which brings me to this question. What legislation, we'll say day one, you're elected, what legislation can't you wait to work on and introduce?
Well, I'll tell you like this. Since COVID, There is so many things that run through my mind, but I have to push for our children.
Mhm.
There are two parts to what I like to do with our children. Number one, we've got to make up that year that we lost to COVID with just Zoom. So immediately, I want to find some funding to have tutoring in place for our children, and not only for the tutoring for the children, but for the parents as well, if they so desire,
Tutoring for the parents.
as well, to be able to aid their children with
Okay.
the lessons learned. Now, there's two ways that we can get this done.
Mhm.
Number one, we have a Zoom network in place. I would like for that Zoom network to continuously stay in place and for those sessions in every classroom to be recorded so that when the child comes home and anybody knows who's a parent, and they say, well, why can't you do the homework? The first thing it says, I didn't understand or I don't know. That parent will be able to go to that Zoom, look up that lesson, and hopefully be able to interpret it well enough to help the child in the evening complete their homework assignment. That's number
So,
one.
yeah, so number one is recording every day. And number two?
Number two, well, the city may cry foul ball. We don't have the money. Well, we have aspiring teachers in colleges. Let's get them vetted and let's get them in the classroom to assist the teachers. So they, number one, they get the experience firsthand, almost like a cooperative.
Right.
And number two, also, the teacher has additional help in the classroom so that these large classes can be broken down and it doesn't necessarily cost the city any money.
Mm-hmm.
So, and that's it. And then now on long term, I'd like to fight vigorously to get vocations reintroduced to every school.
Okay.
I really believe that I love STEM and it's great, but in our neighborhood, in our district, we're looking at about a 68 to 69% graduation rate. And to me, that's unacceptable. Obviously, everyone is not gravitating to college. So we must try to influence those kids who don't gravitate to college that they can still come to school, be excited about it, because they're going to get to a course that they're very well familiar with or that they like doing with their hands that keeps them coming back and maybe says, okay, I'm struggling in math, but I'm going to try harder because I know I can get to my electrical class, or I can get to my plumbing class, or I can get to my carpentry class. And
A lot of
hopefully,
money when you graduate.
right, exactly.
Yeah.
And that brings me to a very sour point right now. Is we have JFK expanding, $13 billion would it be? And what are we getting out of it as a community, even though we're going to suffer a lot of environmental injustice from it? Noise pollution, air pollution, traffic, all of this stuff we're going to suffer as a community. We got a little office there offering people, and I'm not knocking what they're doing, don't get me wrong, but I know we could do so much more.
Yeah, what would you do to add to it? So
Okay. We have to go back, get all the electeds in one room, sit down with Port Authority and say, we demand more. We demand Port Authority fund a location that's going to teach plumbing, electrical, solar panel installation, solar panel repair, electrical car repair, because that's where we're headed, and give the residents of Southeast Queens the priority in those classes so that our people,
high school and like a college type, right?
at high school, adolescents, young adults, ex-offenders, I want everyone to have access to those classes. I want them to have access to those classes, and I want them to get licensed in those industries, in those fields. And not only that, but it becomes full circle. This is my vision. It becomes full circle because now those same individuals can now go to that store on Murdoch Avenue that's been gated, open it up and say, Anthony's electrical repair.
Right.
Bob's plumbing repair.
Right.
Richie's roofing. We can have that in on people from our neighborhood providing services for our neighborhood. We then start to develop our economic incubator. And now where the money doesn't leave our community, but circulates through it. Poverty is reduced, unemployment is reduced. And guess what comes along with that, Miss Lewis? Crime goes down. People are happy. This is what we must do. This is my vision. That's what I'll fight for. I love my community. I love my people. We just got to get them in the right place.
And so that's your day one plan, starting with that. Okay.
Yeah, well, we working on the education. We're going to take it in steps, but that's where I'm alluding to. Absolutely.
So what would you say is the biggest problem right now in the district?
Ooh.
You talked about a lot of different ones, education, crime. Yeah. So what do you say is the number one?
I'm going to be honest with you. People may not notice. I have worn out at least 2 pairs of sneakers walking through this district over the last 6 months. And I got a map that's highlighted to show you every block that I've walked on. Not sent somebody, but personally walked on. And right now, the biggest challenge is a quality of life that people have given me. And as they say, speeders. Everybody wants a speed bump on their block. Everybody. I don't know where we're going to get the asphalt for it from, because everybody wants a speed bump. That seems to be the #1 complaint, believe it or not. The #1 complaint is everybody said they're speeding, but they don't want the cameras, but they do want the speed bumps.
And so legislatively, how do you solve that problem?
Ooh, oh my goodness gracious. And the only reason I say that is because, like I said, I've walked miles and I don't know if we can get that much speed bumps installed. I'll be honest with you. But obviously, education awareness is not going to do it. We're going to have to put some speed bumps down in some locations, especially any that have been accident prone. We give those priority. But I mean, it's unfortunate, but we have to try to curb this tide with speeding and these loud mufflers. I already introduced a game plan for the loud mufflers, even though
what is that
somebody heard it, because
so,
we took it already.
Mufflers, the muffler problem gets 10 times worse in the summer. I don't know what the correlation is between warm weather and people going outside and drilling into their mufflers, but for some reason it does happen every year. So what's your plan for the muffler problem? And if anybody's watching and they're not familiar, the muffler problem is how mufflers are modified so that they, instead of being their regular whatever volume they are supposed to be regularly, they are very, very loud. And that's
some of them even sound like gunshots when they backfire and all of that good stuff.
Very
I had spoken about this about 2 months ago. Again, being in policing, it's not a difficult, same thing that we dealt with in the early 90s when everybody had a loud sound system and they wanted to come through at 2 o'clock in the morning and vibrate you out of your bed. We have to equip the vehicles with what they call decibel readers. Decibel readers actually read noise level. And we have to equip those cars with those decibel readers so that when they do pass a vehicle that they believe is a loud muffler or modified muffler, they can actually take action. Because you can't calibrate your ear. We might know it sounds loud, but when you go into a court of law, if you don't have anything substantial, obviously it's going to be thrown out.
It won't be up, doesn't work in front of the judge.
Right. That doesn't pan out too well. So we have to equip the police cars or every other police car with a decibel reader, or at least make sure at least one police car on patrol in that precinct has a decibel reader, and that they're able to take action against these vehicles that come through with these extraordinarily loud mufflers. So that's my plan for that.
Okay.
Yes.
So we've got the loud mufflers, we've got the speeders, and your third the third biggest problem in the district, as you see.
Obviously, like I said, I've walked this district and we vary in age group and demographics from block to block or every couple of blocks. And if I talk to my seniors, obviously safety is their #1 priority. They want more policing. When I talk to my millennials, one thing they don't want to see is more police. So we're in the middle with this.
Yeah, how do you solve that?
Well, I'll tell you like this. There's some things that I think that we can get away from with policing. And that comes from a very personal perspective. And that is, I don't want to have to see police respond to people with a mental diminished capacity that are unarmed and not violent. There's no reason to have police officers respond to scenarios like that, because I've been involved in those. And even though they're unarmed and non-violent, as soon as we show up in uniform, they become agitated. So I propose to remove that, reform that from the police. Let's put a psych clinician and a medical technician with the resources to show up and actually aid those individuals. And when I say with the resources, be able to take them, put them in the car, and actually get them somewhere where they're going to get the actual help. We're not going to take them and dump them off into the mental side of a hospital, let a doctor talk to them for a day or two, and then put them right back out on the street, which is normally what happens if they stay there 24 hours. We want to have the resources to be able to drill down into the problem as to why they are in the position they're in. So that's one thing that I like to do. That's one thing that I like to do. I like to see that reformed from the police. As far as the seniors, well, I believe that we get our economic incubator in place, crime goes down, they're going to feel better automatically, because they're going to know that their grandson can't hang out till 2 o'clock in the morning because he's got to get up to be on that site making that $60 an hour as an electrician or as a plumber. And he's going to want to go to sleep at night to make that $60 an hour.
And he's
So
not going to
that's
be living at grandma's house either anymore.
exactly not much longer.
Grandma will be twice.
Yes. So and that again, that all goes full circle. Our young men and women will be able to buy the homes that they grew up in or in the area that they grew up in,
Or a grandma's house.
or grandma's house, and we won't have to be gentrified or relocated because we now have the means to stay put where we're at.
Mhm. So, 4 years from now, let's say you are elected, and 4 years from now, how are we going to be able to measure your progress in 4 years?
Wow. I'll tell you, part of my ambition is to raise the bar on this position so high that the community will say it's going to be very difficult to replace Anthony Rivers. He came out here, he had two sources of income as a pension as a lieutenant and residual income as a financial services provider of 27 years. He didn't take the job for a check. He took the job for love of community. And he worked so hard. I don't know if I can follow in his footsteps. That's what I like to see. That's where it's going to be at.
That's your
Because I'm not taking this job for a check. I'm taking this job because as I walk this district, everybody says, why vote? Nothing changes. I'm going to work tireless to see that these changes as much as I can. And I want the information disseminated, not to a handful of people, but throughout the community so that everybody's involved. I think far too often our culture is, as soon as an elected walks in, we want to snap photos and clap for him. We haven't heard the first word out of his or her mouth, and this is the reaction that people give. So they feel as though they don't have to work. No, nobody never clapped for me when I showed up for work. I don't know about you, Miss Lewis, but I didn't get a standing ovation just by walking through the door. We had to do a report. We had to show some sort of result before we started clapping for people. I'd like to bring that culture back. I'd like to bring that culture back. I like to have the people hold the positions accountable. Get these electeds to work. Make sure that they're working on our behalf and not just sitting back with their feet up and their hands behind their head saying, I've arrived. That's what's going to happen 4 years from now.
Other than your work in the police department, what sets you apart from all the others? There's like everybody, it seems like one person on every block in the 27th is running. So, because there's a lot of people running for this position. So, what sets you apart from all of them?
Everything that Anthony Rivers has been a part of has been from a non-paying position. Oh, some people have some great accolades on their sites. Oh boy, do they. How many of them were paid to do what they did? Everything that I've done, everything on my website, I filed a complaint with the New York State Attorney General's office. We didn't get the response we want. We didn't make one trip there. I led a coalition of people there, not once, but twice. When you go to my website, you'll see me standing up at a tax hearing commission, standing up testifying, not on behalf of the address that I live at, but on behalf of Southeast Queens. When you go to click on my website and you see me at a town hall meeting, you don't see me talking about something personal about Anthony Rivers. You see me talking about what is affecting Southeast Queens. Everything that I'm involved in is for the greater good of community, not for Anthony Rivers' benefit. Everything that I do has been at our expense. Every time we walked into Supreme Court to file those papers, every single time was $350 expense. And we filed 3 different times. And it's not a problem. I'm not complaining. I'm saying everything that I do is for the greater good of community, and I don't get paid for it. Some people can say it's a thankless job, but I say no. I say when you love something, you're willing to fight for it. That's what separates me from the rest of the candidates. How many of them got paid to do what they did? What kind of paid positions were they in when they did it? Anthony Rivers was in no paid position. Anthony Rivers is just like everyone out there, sick and tired of being sick and tired, roll up his sleeves and got involved to get it done.
Thanks. Who knows you best, candidate Rivers?
Nothing but my manager, my consultant, my stylist. That would be my co-founder and People for the Neighborhood. That's my wife.
What is her name?
Pamela Rivers.
All right. So Pamela Rivers knows you best. So what would she say is your greatest strength?
Wow. My greatest strength?
According to Mrs. Rivers.
Oh, wow. I'm going to say, she says that I'm good at talking to people and that people see me as I am, very genuine and forthcoming. I'm probably not a good politician, because I always say what I mean what I say. And I expect the same thing from other people. And unfortunately, in politics, you don't get that. So I don't know. I don't know. Sometime I may have to go into City Hall and bite my tongue a little bit just so I can feel out what's going on before I jump in and start wanting to get at people. I don't know.
Okay. And what would Mrs. Rivers, the illustrious Pamela, what would she say is your greatest weakness?
I'm an emotional person.
How so?
I'm fiery, I'm emotional, and sometimes it's to my detriment because I might jump in too fast. So I
Okay.
gotta learn to listen twice as much. I'm grabbing my ears if you can't see, then talk.
And as we wind things up for today, what advice would you, candidate Rivers, give to young Anthony Rivers? Let's say 10-year-old Anthony Rivers. What advice would you give to him?
Wow. First of all, I would say don't be that young Anthony Rivers. When you first get some money in your hand, don't go buy a car. Invest in some property.
Oh, of course, financial advice.
Yes.
What else? What else?
Um, I really, I have no regrets. So I really can't say anything else. I've worked hard. I started working at age 14 as soon as you could with working papers.
What was your first job?
Oh, wow. Well, I started working before 14. I started packing bags in my local grocery store and helping women carry their groceries home. And I did that at around the age of 12 and 13.
Wow.
And yeah, listen, 6 brothers and sisters.
Yeah.
You need to make a few extra dollars if you want a slice of pizza from time to time in your pocket. You know, a slice of pizza was 75 cents back then.
And so after the grocery store, I guess what was your first real?
Okay. All right. Well, obviously, summer youth employment, got
Right.
involved with summer youth employment, did
Right.
that.
That's great.
And then
Back then
I
it was
did.
great. Yeah.
Yes, it was. And it came in very handy too. Came time for school clothing and things of that nature, because that's what I used my money for. It wasn't no party. And it was, hey, you need them sneakers, you need them pants, you need that shirt. You better take that money and go buy it with that money you're making. After summer youth, I graduated to a Burger King, flipped my burgers in Burger King.
Yeah.
And then from there, I really looked up.
Did you ever get, I don't know how it is at Burger King, I know how it is at McDonald's, but did you ever get onto the fries? Because that was like a big promotion.
No, actually, I was the broiler guy. You just throw those burgers down the broiler and so forth, and that was it.
Watch the flame.
Yes, flame broiled burgers. Yes, and clean up. That was my job. And then I actually got really elevated, and I got a messenger job. For people don't know what that is,
Wow.
you carry packages from place to place, and I did that in Manhattan. And I always tell the story.
So you've got great bike skills.
Ever.
What you're telling us is you could really ride a bike.
Well, no, it was on foot, believe it or not.
Oh, really? Wow.
Yes, this is, you know, we pre-fax machines. So sometimes people needed documents that had to be signed and taken back. And then they wanted, sometimes I carried very expensive stuff and I didn't know it because I was a young, unsuspected individual. And they liked my face and everything. Like, take this and take it over here. And you take it there. And the doorman used to rob us of our tips because they used to try to take the packages from us. But then we got hip to the game. And we was like, no, I'm bonded. And this has to be hand delivered.
Right. Bonded. Wow. You worked, I could tell you were a real messenger if you know what bonded is. Yeah.
Yes. And then all of a sudden, I took packages. I didn't know who it was. Elizabeth Taylor, Yoko Ono, John.
Wow.
I had no clue who these people were. I was in that Dakota building more than a little bit delivering packages, and I didn't know who the people were. But they gave good tips. I will tell you that. I remember that. $5 back then was a good tip.
I know.
Yes.
And so we're almost out of time. So I guess we have 2 minutes left. In the last 2 minutes, make your case for the people. Candidate Rivers, everyone, ladies and gentlemen.
Well, like I previously stated, I'm a married father of 3 and a homeowner in this community. I'm a former United States Marine. I served my country. 23 years with NYPD. I served my city. I'm a community activist. I've already served my community in an unofficial capacity. If I was able to accomplish these things in an unofficial capacity, only imagine what I'm able to do in an official capacity. Everything that I've done has always been for the greater good of community and not for the personal service of Anthony Rivers. I've been blessed. I get 2 sources of income. I get a pension as a retired lieutenant from NYPD. I get residual income from being a licensed financial services provider of 27 years. So I'm not taking this job for the sake of a paycheck, for putting my feet up to say I've arrived. I'm sick and tired of being sick and tired, just like you, of people getting in these positions and one, not properly advocating on behalf of community, and two, not being very transparent. We have to find a way to disseminate information about what's going on to everyone so that everyone can be involved and that we can hold whoever wins accountable to the community. So I believe that I'm the best candidate for the position. I believe my integrity has already been proven from the position that I've held previously. And I believe that I will work tirelessly to bring those things that I spoke about in this interview into fruition, into making it happen, into reality. And
Thank
I don't think anybody's going to work harder than me to do that. So I'm asking you to come out and vote for me, Anthony Rivers, number 6 on the ballot on June 22nd.
Very quickly, who's your number two? You're ranking yourself first. Who's number two?
You know, I can't say quickly because I'm still in a dilemma with that. Obviously, it would be
Okay,
somebody
still
who I
working.
believe is a
All
real
right.
community activist.
All right. Thank you. Candidate Anthony Rivers, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for taking 45 minutes out and joining us. On behalf of A Better Jamaica, best of luck to you, and reminding everyone to get out and vote for City Council and for everyone else on the slate this June. Thanks again, candidate Anthony Rivers. I'm Gail Lewis for A Better Jamaica. Thanks so much for joining me, and I look forward to seeing you again very soon. Take care, everyone. Thanks.
Thank you. And thank you for having me.